Okay, so for today's lesson, we're going to be doing two-step equations. This is a step up from one steps, which had one type of operation that you need to do to finish them. Two steps require two. One is either addition or subtraction, and the other is multiplication or division. And we do them in that order. So my first step for when I do a two-step equation is either addition or subtraction depending on which thing I need to do to help get the variable by itself. And remember, our goal for solving equations is to get a value for the variable. Okay, so the first step is either addition or subtraction, depending. And the second step is multiplication or division. And in my first example here, I've got negative 3x minus 4 is equal to 5. And remember, this still follows all the rules of an equation. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other to maintain balance. Okay, I'm trying to get x by itself, get a value for x, which means I have to get rid of this negative 3, which is being multiplied, and this negative 4, which is being subtracted. Okay, so my first step is either addition or subtraction. So I have to do the opposite of subtracting 4, which is adding 4. That'll get rid of the 4 on this side, but remember, to maintain balance, we have to add 4 to the other side as well. Okay, so I get negative 3x is equal to 5 plus 4, which is 9. Okay, now remember, negative 3x is being multiplied. Okay, so in order to get rid of the negative 3, I have to divide both sides by negative 3. Okay, so when I do that, negative 3 divided by negative 3 becomes 1. Get x equals 9 divided by negative 3 is negative 3. And so my answer is x is equal to negative 3. Okay, if I were to plug back in negative 3, I should get 5 on both sides. Okay, so right now I want you to pause the video for a second and try this next one on your own. I've got x divided by 5 plus 3 is equal to 7. So I need to figure out how to get x by itself. So pause it real quick and try. Okay, so what you should have done, first thing I need to get rid of is this positive 3. I've got the 5 attached to the x via division, but I've got this added 3 out here. And to get rid of it, I need to subtract 3 from both sides. Okay? Remember, put up the mirror. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Okay, so when I simplify that, positive 3 minus 3 becomes 0, cancels out. Get x divided by 5 is equal to 7 minus 3, and 7 minus 3 is 4. Okay, so on both sides, I'm going to multiply by 5. Okay, what happens there is that will become 1. I get x is equal to 4 times 5, which is 20. Okay, so the answer you should have got was 20. All right, so moving on. Aside from two-step equations, you're going to have to be able to form actual equations from word problems. And these are some two-step type problems that you'll be experiencing. Okay, so for the first one here, we got 331 students went on a field trip. 6 buses were filled and 7 students traveled in cars. So the key note here is that the buses were filled up. That means that the maximum number of students were in each bus. Okay, and the last part of the question here tells me what my variable is going to be, because I have how many students were in each bus. So the variable, and what I'm going to call x, is equal to the number of students per bus. And remember, since it's the maximum number on each bus, that means that x has to be that maximum number. Okay, so what I'm going to do is come up here and circle all of my numbers, because numbers in math problems are important. And I know you're thinking, word problems, they have to be the worst. They're really not so bad once you get the feel for them down. Okay, so I've got all types of numbers. We have actual numbers, then words that are numbers. So in this case, 6. And then another 7. Okay, and now we've got the numbers hammered out, so we have to go figure out what the words mean. And we're going to try to replace words with operations or symbols. And since this is the number of students per bus, I'm going to replace every time I see buses with X, because that indicates the total number of students that rode buses, right? They were filled, which means that, of course, their maximum number per bus. Now, and is a special number because and is as well in English, right? So as well in math is add. So every time I see and, I can add. Okay. And those number of students traveled in cars. Students traveling in cars, that's just flavor text. What I really want is the actual number of students because we're trying to figure out how many students per bus. So flavor text is nice, but really I just need the number 7. Okay, and what I have here, 331, well, that's a total, right? That's I can't go above or below that for the number of students. So I'm going to put that on one side of my equation because that's whatever I have on the other side has to end up being equal to 331. Okay, so plug it in and then basically write out an algebraic equation. So I've got 6 buses, so 6 and x implies 6 times the number of students on each bus gives me a total number of students that ride buses. Okay. On top of that, I'm adding 7 because 7 students rode in cars, so I don't have them accounted for just yet. Okay, and what I ended up with is a 2-step equation that I can solve for x to find the number of students on the buses. Okay, so just like before, the first step is add or subtract. Well, the x, 7 is being added to it, so I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides. Okay, so I get 331, sorry, minus 7, and that gives me 324. Okay, the 6x comes down because I haven't done anything to that, and I'm canceling out the 7. So I get 324 is equal to 6x. The 6 is being multiplied by x, so I have to do the opposite and divide. So I'm going to divide both sides by 6. And 324 divided by 6, well, 24 divided by 6 is 4. So that goes into one place. And then the leftover 300 divided by 6 is 50. So 54 students. Now remember, in word problems, you're going to have to label your units. So since I was looking for students on the bus, my answer is 54 students fit on each bus. It's a pretty full bus. All right, so my next example problem is pretty short in terms of words. There's a lot of ideas here. The sum, and remember sum means to add, of 3 consecutive numbers. So consecutive is important here because consecutive, try to think about it for a second. What do you think that means? If I say consecutive episodes of something, I mean one right after the other. So 3 consecutive numbers, one right after the other, add up, because it's sum, to be 165. And I want to know what all 3 numbers are. Okay, so 3 consecutive numbers. For example, I've got 1, 2, and 3. Now those obviously don't add up to 165, but they express kind of the idea. If I want to find either the first, the second, or the third number, and you can look for either one because once you have one of the numbers, the other 2 are in a line, right? Either one after, one before, or 2 after, or 2 before. So I'm going to pick one of these to be my variable. And in this case, I'm going to make it 1. The first number is going to be x. And how do I get my first number to my second number? Well, I have to add 1. So the second number is going to be x plus 1. All right? So, and you see the pattern here. To get from my first number, which is x, the unknown, to my last number, I have to add 2. So I add 1 to x to get to the second number, and I add 2 to x to get to the third number. So that's going to be x plus 2. And it says is 165. So not only am I adding all of these numbers together, so x plus 1 plus x plus 2, it's telling me that the solution is 165. So if I write that out, x plus 1 plus x plus 2, the answer has to be 165. And you'll recognize this maybe from the other day. On this side of the equation, I'm going to have to combine before I can solve. So how many x's do I have on this side? Well, I have 3. X plus x plus x. So I get 3x. And then on this side, I have 1 plus 2. That gives me 3. And it's equal to 165. Okay? So pause the video again real quick and just try to solve for x. Okay, so I need to get the x by itself, so I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. Because this 3 is being added to it, I need to do the opposite. Okay, so I'm left with 3x is equal to 162. Because 165 minus 3 is 162. Then, this 3 is being multiplied by x, so I need to do the opposite, divide by 3. Okay, so divide by 3, I get 1. X is equal to, well, 16 divided by, or 162 divided by 3 gives me 54. Okay, so my other two numbers, since I solved for the first number, 54 is my first number, so I want to go the 2 after that. So 54, 55, and 56. So x plus 1, 55, x plus 2, 56. All right, so that's all. Bring your questions tomorrow and work on the practice for tonight. Thank you. Have a good night.